James Preston, a millionaire bound by his grandmother's will, enters a fake marriage with a waitress. As snow falls on Christmas Eve, he realizes he might be risking more than his fortune, his heart. Before we dive into the story, let's do what Sleepless in Seattle taught us. Share where you're listening from. Comment below. Snow drifts past floor-to-ceiling windows, each flake caught in the harsh glow of Manhattan's artificial dawn. James Preston stands at the edge of his penthouse living room, watching the city crawl to life 40 stories below. The December air presses cold against the glass, but the room maintains its precise 72 degrees, as controlled and sterile as the rest of his life. His reflection fragments across the window's surface. Sharp jawline, steel blue eyes, perfect posture. The same image that graces magazine covers and business journals, but though none capture the hollow weight settling in his chest as another holiday season descends on New York. The penthouse stretches behind him in shades of gray and white, its minimalist decor more showroom than home. Every surface gleams with the careful attention of a cleaning service. Yet dust somehow clings to the untouched crystal decanter set his grandmother gave him last Christmas. Her last Christmas. His phone buzzes against the marble countertop, screen lighting up with his assistant's name. James lets it vibrate twice before answering. Laura. Good morning, Mr. Preston. Her voice carries its usual efficient cheer. Your 9 o'clock with the Singapore investors is confirmed. They're particularly interested in discussing the AI integration timeline. James moves to the kitchen, bare feet silent against heated floors. Send me the latest projections. Already in your inbox. A pause, and the holiday gala at the Preston estate is scheduled for 7. Should I have your tuxedo pressed and delivered? The family estate. James' jaw tightens as he pours coffee into a matte black mug. Steam rises between them like a barrier. Cancel it. Sir? Laura's composure slips. But the annual tree lighting, it's tradition. Your grandmother always. Traditions change. The words come out sharper than intended. James softens his tone. The investors will want dinner. Move my evening appointments to tomorrow. Another pause, longer this time. Of course, Mr. Preston. Though perhaps some holiday decorations for the penthouse. The lobby's Christmas display is quite... That's all, Laura. James ends the call before she can finish, but her words linger like frost on glass. His phone lights up again, this time with a cascade of notifications. Party invitations, charity galas, desperate attempts at end-of-year networking dressed in tinsel and good cheer. James swipes them away with practiced indifference. None of them want him. They want his influence, his connections, the power of the Preston name at their events. He moves to his home office, where a single framed photo breaks the room's minimalist aesthetic. His grandmother Margaret smiles from behind the glass, her eyes bright with the same determination that built the Preston Empire. The last person who saw past his wealth to the boy who still needed guidance, even as a self-made billionaire. You'd hate what I've done with the place, he murmurs, touching the frame's edge. Margaret's penthouse had been warm, cluttered with memories and mismatched furniture that told stories. She would have filled this sterile space with garlands and lights, insisted on a tree that scraped the ceiling. James turns away from the photo, focusing instead on the snow-covered city beyond his windows. Below, people hurry through the morning rush, wrapped in coats and scarves, carrying cups of overpriced coffee. Their breath forms clouds in the winter air as they laugh and chat, embracing the season's magic while he observes from his climate-controlled tower. A stack of unopened presents sits in the corner of his living room, each wrapped in expensive paper and topped with elaborate bows. Business associates and potential partners trying to curry favor, their gifts as meaningless as their holiday wishes. James leaves them untouched, a monument to the transactional nature of his relationships. The elevator chimes, announcing his car service's arrival. James straightens his tie, shrugs on a tailored suit jacket that costs more than most people's monthly rent. His reflection in the hallway mirror shows a man in complete control, successful, powerful, untouchable. Only his grandmother would have noticed the emptiness behind his eyes. The first meeting of the day takes place in a glass-walled conference room overlooking Central Park. Snow continues to fall, coating the trees in white, while James outlines acquisition strategies to a group of Singapore investors. Their attention never wavers. They know his reputation for turning struggling companies into gold. The AI integration timeline is aggressive, James explains, his voice carrying easily across the polished table. But our team has identified key optimization points that will accelerate the process. The lead investor, Mr. Chen, nods appreciatively. Your vision is impressive, Mr. Preston. Though we had hoped to discuss this over dinner, perhaps at your family's holiday gala? James maintains his professional smile while his chest tightens. I'm afraid I have prior commitments this evening. However, I've arranged dinner at Le Bernardin. Their private dining room offers more discretion for our discussions. The meeting continues, numbers and projections flowing like currency between them. James leads the conversation with practiced ease, but his mind keeps drifting to the estate, to the traditions he's abandoning, to Margaret's disappointment if she could see him now. Later, at an overpriced restaurant in Midtown, James sits across from Clara Thompson, his latest in a string of superficial relationships. She's beautiful in the way that turns heads, long dark hair, perfect makeup, a smile that knows its power. But her eyes keep drifting to his watch, his suit, the implications of wealth in every detail. Darling, you simply must come to the Vanderbilt's Christmas Eve party, Clara says, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Her fingers are cold, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Everyone who's anyone will be there. James shifts his hand away, disguising the movement by reaching for his water. I have meetings in Tokyo that week. You work too hard. She pouts, practiced and pretty. The holidays are for celebration, for connections. Surely your empire can survive without you for one night? Her words echo with hollow charm, reminding him of countless others who've tried to climb the social ladder using his shoulders as steps. James signals for the check, already composing a message to Laura about his sudden unavailability for future lunches. The drive to the Preston estate that evening feels longer than usual, each mile weighted with memories he'd rather forget. Snow blankets the manicured grounds, softening the mansion's imposing silhouette against the darkening sky. Light spills from every window, warm and inviting, but James feels like an intruder as he parks his Aston Martin in the circular drive. Inside, the foyer gleams with familiar opulence. A massive Christmas tree dominates the space, its branches heavy with ornaments collected over generations. The scent of pine and cinnamon hangs in the air, Margaret's signature holiday potpourri, still faithfully maintained by the staff. I thought you weren't coming. Alina, his cousin, descends the grand staircase with a glass of wine in hand. Her tone carries an edge of accusation. Laura said you were busy with investors. I am. James removes his coat, handing it to a waiting butler. I'm here for the ornament ceremony, nothing more. Elena's laugh lacks humor. Of course, heaven forbid you actually participate in family traditions without treating them like business obligations. Don't start, Elena. Someone has to. She moves closer, wine sloshing dangerously in her glass. You know what your problem is, James? Ever since grandmother died, you've treated this family like one of your failing companies, something to be managed from a distance, stripped for assets and discarded. James clenches his jaw, fighting back a sharp retort. I have responsibilities. So did she. Elena gestures to a nearby photo. Margaret at a charity gala, surrounded by admirers. But she never forgot what mattered. The foundation, the people we help, the difference we make. It was never just about money for her. Are you finished? James keeps his voice level, controlled. Elena studies him for a moment, then sighs. You know where the ornaments are kept. Try not to rush through this one tradition we have left. She leaves him standing in the foyer, her words settling like frost on his skin. James moves through familiar corridors until he reaches the library, Margaret's favorite room. Here the holiday decorations are subtle, a small tree in the corner, garlands along the bookshelves. A collection of hand-painted ornaments waits on a silver tray. James selects one without really looking, not wanting to linger among the memories this room holds. But as he turns to leave, a framed photo catches his eye. A younger version of himself sits on Margaret's lap, both of them laughing as they hang ornaments on a tree. His smile in the photo is genuine, unguarded, an expression he barely recognizes now. Something tightens in his chest, a mixture of longing and regret he quickly suppresses. James straightens his tie, squaring his shoulders as he heads back to the foyer. He has investors waiting, deals to close, an empire to maintain. He doesn't have time for nostalgia. The ornament ceremony passes in a blur of forced smiles and polite conversation. James endures the familiar ritual with practiced patience, hanging the delicate glass ball on a branch before making his excuses. Elena watches him leave with disappointed eyes, but she doesn't try to stop him. Back in his car, James loosens his tie and exhales slowly. His phone screen lights up with more messages: business proposals, party invitations, people wanting pieces of him wrapped in holiday cheer. He ignores them all, focusing on the snow-covered road ahead. The next morning brings an unexpected message from Mr. Harris, the family lawyer. His request for an urgent meeting carries enough gravity that James rearranges his schedule, arriving at the law firm's offices just before noon. The conference room where Mr. Harris waits feels like a time capsule of Margaret's influence. Family photos line the walls, including several of charity events she organized. A familiar music box sits on the credenza, its Christmas melody permanently silenced. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Mr. Harris gestures to a chair, his expression unreadable. "There's a matter concerning your grandmother's will that requires immediate attention." James sits, maintaining his professional mask. "I thought everything was settled months ago." "Not quite everything." Mr. Harris removes a document from his briefcase, sliding it across the polished table. There was a specific stipulation that only became relevant recently. James scans the paper, his composure cracking as the words register. "This can't be serious." "I'm afraid it is." Mr. Harris adjusts his glasses. "According to the will, you must be married by midnight on Christmas Eve to inherit both the estate and control of the charitable foundation." "Married?" James stands abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. "This is absurd. She can't legally." "She can, and she did." Mr. Harris remains calm, watching James pace. "Your grandmother was very specific about the terms." James runs a hand through his hair, disrupting its careful styling. "Why? What possible reason?" "She wanted you to find balance, James." Mr. Harris's voice softens. "A life beyond boardrooms and business deals, someone to share it with, as she shared hers with your grandfather." "By forcing me into marriage?" James laughs without humor. "This is manipulation, pure and simple." "Perhaps." Mr. Harris picks up another document. "But the terms are clear. Without a marriage certificate by midnight on Christmas Eve, the estate and foundation will be dissolved. All assets will be distributed to various charities." The implications hit James like physical blows. The estate, Margaret's legacy, the home she built, the foundation that helps thousands, all of it gone because of an impossible deadline. "How long have you known about this?" "The timing was part of her instructions." Mr. Harris meets his glare steadily. "She wanted you to find someone for the right reasons, not treat it like another business transaction." James grips the back of his chair, knuckles white. 2 weeks. She expects me to find and marry someone in 2 weeks? Wait, she expected you to already have found someone worth marrying. Mr. Harris's words cut deep. The deadline was meant to be motivation, not the entire point. James moves to the window, watching snow fall on the city below. His mind races through options, calculations, possible solutions, but every scenario feels hollow. Desperate. There has to be another way. There isn't. Mr. Harris's tone carries finality. Marriage by Christmas Eve, or everything goes to charity. Those are the terms. James leaves the office in a daze, his carefully ordered world tilting on its axis. The holiday decorations that line the streets now feel like mockery, twinkling lights and garlands framing an impossible choice. Back in his penthouse, James stares at Margaret's photo on his desk. Her smile seems different now, holding secrets he never thought to question while she was alive. The woman who taught him about business and power had orchestrated one final lesson about what really matters. But as the sun sets over Manhattan, casting long shadows across his empty home, James feels more lost than ever. The empire he's built, the control he maintains over every aspect of his life, none of it prepared him for this ultimatum. His phone buzzes with a reminder about the charity gala that evening. James considers canceling, retreating into work until he can form a plan. But Margaret's voice echoes in his memory. Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as inconveniences. With resigned determination, James heads to his closet to change. He has 2 weeks to find a wife or lose everything his grandmother built. The thought settles like ice in his chest as he straightens his bow tie, checking his reflection one final time. The man in the mirror looks composed, controlled, every inch the successful billionaire. Only his eyes betray the desperation lurking beneath the surface, a desperation that will lead him to make a decision that changes everything. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom sparkles with holiday splendor, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across marble floors. James moves through the crowd with practiced ease, nodding to acquaintances while avoiding deeper engagement. Every smile, every laugh grates against his nerves like sandpaper. Near the bar, he pauses to observe the room. Wealthy socialites and business associates mingle beneath elaborate decorations, their conversations a symphony of practiced charm and hidden agendas. James recognizes the dance. He's performed it countless times himself. "Champagne, sir." The voice catches him off guard, direct, lacking the usual deference he encounters at these events. James turns to find a waitress balancing a tray of champagne flutes with casual grace. Her name tag reads Lucy, and her expression holds a hint of amusement. "The gentleman in the terrible Christmas tie has been watching you for 10 minutes, she says, nodding toward a potential investor James has been avoiding. "I'd suggest a strategic retreat to the terrace." James finds himself fighting a smile. Speaking from experience, let's just say I've developed a sixth sense for escape routes at these things. Lucy's eyes sparkle with mischief. Though usually it's the ladies in designer dresses doing the stalking. Before James can respond, a socialite in an overly fitted gown approaches. "James Preston, you've been hiding all evening." "Pardon me," Lucy says, stepping back. "Duty calls, though the terrace really is lovely this time of year." She disappears into the crowd, leaving James to face the socialite's practiced flirtation. The interaction lingers in his mind as he endures the usual small talk. Lucy's genuine humor stands out in a room full of calculated gestures. When he spots her again, she's deftly handling a drunk guest's unwanted advances with a combination of firm politeness and subtle maneuvering that speaks of experience. "She's quite something, isn't she?" The comment comes from an elderly woman nearby. "Been watching her all evening. Handles herself better than half these trust fund babies." James finds himself nodding. "She seems capable. More than capable." The woman sips her champagne. "Heard her talking earlier about trying to start her own business. A bakery, I think. But you know how it is, banks don't exactly line up to help working-class entrepreneurs these days." The words trigger something in James' mind, a possibility so outrageous he almost dismisses it. But as he watches Lucy navigate the crowd with quiet confidence, the idea takes root, a marriage of convenience, a business arrangement with clear terms and a defined exit strategy, someone smart enough to understand the transaction, independent enough to walk away when it's done. The perfect solution drops into his lap like a gift, wrapped in practicality instead of sentiment. Just the kind of opportunity Margaret would have appreciated, or perhaps planned for all along. James moves through the crowd with renewed purpose, tracking Lucy's movements until he finds an opening. She's clearing empty glasses from a deserted table near the terrace doors, her movements efficient and purposeful. "That escape route still available?" he asks, approaching with calculated casualness. Lucy glances up, surprise flickering across her features. "Mr. Preston, survived the Christmas tie ambush, I see. Thanks to your tactical advice." He gestures toward the terrace. "I'd like to discuss a business proposition if you have a moment." "A business proposition?" Lucy's eyebrows rise as she sets down her tray. "With a waitress?" "With someone who clearly understands the value of directness." James holds her gaze. 5 minutes of your time, that's all I'm asking." Lucy studies him, wariness warring with curiosity in her expression. Finally, she nods. 5 minutes. But if this is about catering your next event, I should warn you, I'm terrible at finger sandwiches. The terrace air hits them like a wall of ice, but it carries a freshness that the ballroom lacks. Snow falls in lazy spirals, coating the elaborate stonework in white. James leads them to a sheltered corner, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'll be direct," he says, watching her reaction carefully. "I need a wife." Lucy blinks. "Excuse me?" "A temporary arrangement. Marriage in name only, with a guaranteed annulment after certain conditions are met." James keeps his voice steady, professional. "You'd be generously compensated for your time and discretion." "Is this a joke?" Lucy wraps her arms around herself, but her voice stays level. Because if it is, my grandmother's will requires me to be married by Christmas Eve or lose control of both the family estate and charitable foundation. The words come out clipped, businesslike. I'm offering you a mutually beneficial arrangement, financial security in exchange for a few weeks of your time. Lucy lets out a short laugh. You're serious. It's not a question. You actually expect me to… What? Pretend to be your loving wife for some inheritance scheme? I expect you to consider a business opportunity. James steps closer, lowering his voice, one that could provide the capital for that bakery you want to open. Her eyes narrow. You've been asking about me. I make it a point to know relevant details about potential business partners. Partners? Lucy's laugh holds an edge now. That's what you're calling this? A partnership? A temporary contract with clear terms and boundaries. James meets her skepticism with calm certainty. No emotional entanglements, no long-term obligations, just a simple exchange of services. Lucy moves to the terrace railing, brushing snow from the stone. Her profile in the dim light shows conflict, consideration. And if I refuse, then I find another solution. James shrugs, though tension coils in his chest. But I suspect we both recognize an opportunity when we see one. A marriage of convenience. Lucy shakes her head, but there's a calculating look in her eyes now, like something out of a bad romance novel. This isn't about romance. James keeps his tone firm. It's about practicality. You need capital for your business. I need a wife to satisfy legal requirements. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. Lucy turns to face him fully. What exactly would this arrangement involve? A civil ceremony, followed by a brief holiday appearance at the family estate. We maintain the illusion until the inheritance is secured, then part ways. James outlines the terms with practiced precision. You'd receive substantial compensation, enough to start your bakery and ensure its success for the first several years. Snow continues to fall around them, dusting Lucy's dark hair with white. She stares out at the city lights, her expression unreadable. This is insane. It's business. James produces a business card, holding it out. Think about it, but don't think too long. Time is a factor here. Lucy takes the card, her fingers brushing his briefly. The contact sends an unexpected jolt through James's carefully maintained composure. I'll consider it, she says finally, but I have conditions of my own. I would expect nothing less. James steps back, restoring professional distance between them. Contact my assistant when you've made your decision. She'll arrange the details. He turns to leave, but Lucy's voice stops him. Why me? When he looks back, her eyes hold a challenge. There must be dozens of socialites in that ballroom who jump at this chance. Why choose the waitress? James studies her for a moment, her direct gaze, her composed stance despite the cold. Because you're the only person here who treated me like a human being rather than a business opportunity. The honesty surprises him. Ironic, considering what I'm proposing. Lucy's laugh sounds genuine this time. Well, Mr. Preston, at least you're honest about your dishonesty. James, he corrects, surprising himself again. If you agree to this, you should probably use my first name. I haven't agreed to anything yet. But there's a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Good night, James. He leaves her on the terrace, snow falling between them like a curtain. The card with his information disappears into her pocket, and James forces himself not to look back as he returns to the warmth of the ballroom. The rest of the evening passes in a blur of meaningless conversations and strategic networking, but his mind keeps drifting to the terrace, to Lucy's direct gaze and unexpected humor, to the possibility of solving his inheritance problem with a simple business arrangement. Later, in his penthouse, James stands at the window watching snow blanket the city. Margaret's photo sits on his desk, her smile knowing. He imagines what she'd say about his solution, whether this calculated arrangement is what she had in mind when she added the marriage clause to her will. His phone sits silent, no message from Lucy yet. James tells himself it doesn't matter that he has backup plans if she refuses, but something about her practical approach to his outrageous proposal feels right. Like finding the perfect piece to complete a puzzle he didn't know he was solving. Snow continues to fall outside his window, and somewhere in the city, a waitress holds his business card and contemplates a decision that could change both their lives. James forces himself to focus on work, on the countless emails demanding his attention, but his thoughts keep returning to the terrace, to snow and dark hair and eyes that saw past his carefully constructed facade. The perfect business arrangement, he reminds himself. Nothing more. But as midnight approaches and his phone remains silent, James can't quite silence the voice in his head that sounds suspiciously like Margaret, whispering about opportunities and the best-laid plans. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead as James slides into the vinyl booth, his tailored suit incongruous against the worn upholstery. The diner's night shift crowd consists of cab drivers and hospital workers, their conversations a low murmur beneath the clinking of cheap ceramic mugs. Lucy sits across from him, still in her waitress uniform from an earlier shift. Her dark hair is pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she studies the contract he's placed between them with sharp focus. No public displays of affection unless absolutely necessary for maintaining appearances, she reads aloud, her finger tracing the line. Good, I'm not interested in being your arm candy. James shifts, unused to such direct speech. The terms are designed to protect both our interests. And what about my interests beyond financial compensation? Lucy looks up, meeting his gaze. I won't be treated like an employee you can dismiss when inconvenient. This arrangement requires mutual respect. Her boldness catches him off guard. Most people in his world navigate conversations through layers of polite pretense, never stating their true intentions. Of course, I wouldn't expect. Yes, you would. Lucy's tone remains level but firm. You're used to people falling over themselves to please you. That's not me. I'll help you with this inheritance situation, but I won't compromise my dignity in the process. James studies her, reassessing. He'd chosen Lucy for her practicality, but her unwavering directness presents an unexpected challenge. Still, her terms are reasonable, and time isn't on his side. Agreed, he says finally. No condescension, no treating you like staff. Anything else? Honesty. Lucy taps the contract. If this is going to work, we need to trust each other enough to be direct about problems. No passive-aggressive power plays or silent treatment when things get uncomfortable. James almost laughs at the irony. A fake marriage built on real honesty. But Lucy's serious expression stops him. Fine. Complete honesty. Good. Lucy pulls a pen from her apron pocket and signs the contract with quick, decisive strokes. Now, how exactly do you plan to convince everyone this isn't completely insane? The question hangs between them as a waitress approaches, that coffee pot in hand. James waves her away, but Lucy accepts a refill with a familiar smile. The contrast between their worlds has never felt starker. I've hired a wedding planner, he says once they're alone again. She'll handle the details, make everything appear legitimate. A wedding planner. Lucy wraps her hands around the coffee mug, her expression skeptical. Because nothing says genuine love like rushing through a professionally orchestrated ceremony. It needs to be convincing. James straightens his tie, a nervous habit he thought he'd broken years ago. The Foundation's board of directors will be watching closely. If they suspect this is purely transactional, then your grandmother's legacy goes to charity instead of staying under your control. Lucy's direct gaze makes him uncomfortable. Tell me something. Why does it matter so much? You're already wealthy. The Foundation's mission would continue either way. James stiffens, unused to having his motivations questioned so bluntly. That's not relevant to our arrangement. Actually, it is. Lucy leans forward. If I'm risking my reputation on this scheme, I deserve to know what's really driving it. Honesty, remember? The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly feel harsh, exposing. James forces himself to maintain eye contact. The Foundation was everything to my grandmother. She built it from nothing, helped thousands of people. Losing control of it would feel like... He trails off, unable to articulate the complex tangle of guilt and obligation that drives him. Like failing her, Lucy finishes softly. Something in her expression shifts, understanding replacing judgment. Okay, then let's make this work. But we do it my way, no overblown spectacle that screams compensation for something. James nods, surprised by the relief that floods through him at her acceptance. The wedding planner arrives tomorrow morning. We can discuss the details then. Tomorrow morning? Lucy's eyebrows rise. Some of us have jobs we can't just reschedule, you know? Consider this your new job. James slides an envelope across the table. Your first payment, as agreed, enough to cover any lost wages while we sort out the arrangements. Lucy doesn't touch the envelope. I'll finish my scheduled shifts. People depend on me showing up when I say I will. Another surprise. James can't remember the last time someone chose minimum wage work over his money. The wedding planner's schedule can adapt. Lucy's tone brooks no argument. I'm not dropping my responsibilities just because you're in a hurry. The planner can meet us at your place after my shift ends at 3. James checks his watch, calculating. Fine, I'll have my driver pick you up. I can take the subway. The planner's coming to my penthouse. Security won't let you up without an escort. Lucy sighs. Right, your ivory tower. Fine, send the car, but I'm not leaving early just because some wedding planner runs on billionaire time. James stands, smoothing his jacket. The conversation hasn't gone entirely as planned, but Lucy's stubborn integrity might actually work in their favor. No one would believe he'd choose someone so defiantly independent unless real feelings were involved. 3 o'clock, he confirms. Don't be late. Lucy's laugh follows him toward the door. Wouldn't dream of disappointing you, Mr. Preston. James, he corrects automatically. We'll see. Lucy turns back to her coffee, dismissing him as easily as she dismissed his attempts at control. James steps out into the night, snow falling softly around him. His driver opens the car door, but James pauses, looking back through the diner's window. Lucy sits exactly as he left her, reviewing the contract with careful attention. He's just signed his immediate future over to a waitress who refuses to be impressed by his wealth or power. Margaret would have loved the irony. The thought stays with him as the car glides through Manhattan's snowy streets, carrying him back to his pristine penthouse where everything runs according to plan, except, apparently, his carefully orchestrated marriage of convenience. Evelyn Mills sweeps into James's penthouse like a force of nature, trailing assistants and iPads and an air of barely contained excitement. Her Hermes scarf flutters as she moves through the space, already gesturing at imaginary decorations. The light in here is perfect, she declares, making notes on her tablet. We'll do the ceremony right here, with the city as our backdrop. White flowers everywhere, crystal accents to catch the winter sunlight. James stands near his kitchen island, watching with growing unease as Evelyn's vision expands. The wedding planner's reputation for luxury events had seemed perfect when he hired her. Now, listening to her plans for ice sculptures and dove releases, he wonders if he's miscalculated. The elevator chimes, announcing Lucy's arrival. She steps out still wearing her waitress uniform, a practical coat dusted with snow. The contrast between her and Evelyn's designer ensemble couldn't be starker. You must be the bride. Evelyn swoops forward, air-kissing Lucy's cheeks. I'm thinking we'll put you in Vera Wang, something classic but dramatic. The photos will be absolutely. No, Lucy's firm tone cuts through Evelyn's enthusiasm. Nothing dramatic, simple, elegant, and personal. Evelyn blinks, her professional smile wavering. But darling, this is the society wedding of the season. Everyone will be watching. We need to make a statement. We'll make it with sincerity. Lucy shrugs off her coat, revealing a coffee stain on her uniform sleeve. I want handwritten vows, not rehearsed speeches. Real flowers, not artificial arrangements. A celebration that feels authentic, not staged. James watches the exchange with growing fascination. Lucy moves through his penthouse as if immune to its luxury, her focus entirely on substance over style. It's refreshingly direct, like everything else about her. But the guest list. Evelyn consults her tablet. Over 200 of Manhattan's most influential will appreciate something genuine. Lucy turns to James. Unless you disagree. He should agree with Evelyn. A lavish spectacle would match everyone's expectations of a Preston wedding. But Lucy's emphasis on authenticity strikes an unexpected chord. Simple and elegant, he decides, surprising himself. Focus on personal touches rather than extravagance. Evelyn looks between them, reassessing. Well, that's different. But I suppose we could work with a more intimate approach, though the vows will need careful review before. The vows will be our own. Lucy's tone leaves no room for argument. Written from the heart, not a PR team. James tenses at that. Genuine vows seem dangerous, too close to real emotion. But before he can object, Lucy continues. They don't have to be romantic declarations, Just honest words about commitment and respect. That's what marriage should be built on, real or otherwise. Her gaze meets his, challenging and sincere. James finds himself nodding, though the idea of writing his own vows fills him with an unfamiliar anxiety. Fine, Evelyn says, typing rapidly. But we'll need to discuss wardrobe immediately. The timeline is incredibly tight, and even a simple wedding requires proper attire. Lucy glances down at her uniform, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. I suppose I can't wear this? Definitely not. Evelyn's horror appears genuine. We'll schedule fittings for tomorrow. Nothing too elaborate, but you'll need to look the part of a Preston bride. Something in Lucy's expression shifts, a crack in her confident facade. James recognizes it, the first real doubt about stepping into his world of wealth and judgment. I have another shift tomorrow, Lucy starts, but James cuts in. Take the day off. I'll handle it with your manager. When Lucy opens her mouth to object, he adds, Please, this part is important. Their eyes meet across the room. After a moment, Lucy nods. All right, but nothing ridiculous. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. Of course not. James surprises himself with his vehemence. That's not what this is about. Evelyn glances between them, her expression thoughtful. Well, perhaps this won't be as challenging as I feared. Now, about the color scheme. The meeting continues, Lucy quietly but firmly redirecting Evelyn's grander ideas towards something more grounded. James finds himself watching her more than participating, struck by her ability to navigate this unfamiliar world without losing herself in it. Eventually, Evelyn sweeps out with a flurry of final instructions, leaving James and Lucy alone in the penthouse. Snow falls silently beyond the windows, casting soft shadows across the hardwood floors. Your world is exhausting, Lucy says finally, sinking onto his leather sofa. Does everything have to be a production? Usually. James moves to his wine fridge, selecting a bottle. Though I'm starting to see the appeal of simplicity. Lucy accepts the glass he offers, but her expression remains troubled. They're going to eat me alive, aren't they? Your society friends, your business associates. I saw how Evelyn looked at my uniform. James pauses, struck by the rare vulnerability in her voice. They'll try, but you don't seem like someone who's easily consumed. A small smile tugs at Lucy's lips. Was that almost a compliment, Mr. Preston? James? He corrects again, settling into a nearby chair. And it was an observation. You've handled everything so far with remarkable authenticity. Is that what we're calling my stubborn refusal to play by your rules? It's what I'm calling your integrity. The words surprise him with their honesty. It's refreshing, actually. Most people in my world are so concerned with appearances that they forget who they really are. Lucy studies him over her wine glass. And who are you? Really? Behind the perfect suits and calculated decisions? The question unsettles him. James stands, moving to the windows where his reflection fragments across the glass. Someone who needs your help, he says finally. Isn't that enough? For now. Lucy's voice carries a hint of something he can't quite identify. Curiosity, perhaps, or challenge. But you might want to figure out the rest before writing those vows. Honesty, remember? She finishes her wine and gathers her coat, declining his offer of a car service. James watches her walk to the elevator, her posture straight despite her obvious fatigue. Same time tomorrow? She asks, pausing at the doors. The car will pick you up at 9. When she starts to object, he adds, After you've had time to sleep, the fittings will take most of the day. Lucy nods, too tired to argue. As the elevator doors close, James catches a glimpse of her starting to hum. A Christmas carol, he realizes with surprise. The sound echoes in his mind long after she's gone. A simple melody that somehow makes his vast penthouse feel emptier than before. He moves through the space, noting places where Evelyn plans to place decorations. Everything will be perfect, controlled, exactly as he's arranged. Yet Lucy's insistence on authenticity nags at him, making him question the careful facade he's constructed. The snow continues to fall outside his windows, and somewhere in the city, a waitress who demands honesty is probably riding the subway home, humming carols and thinking about wedding vows. James touches the cool glass, watching his breath fog the surface. For the first time in years, he wonders what he'll write in those vows, what truths might emerge when he's forced to be honest about commitment and respect. The thought should terrify him, but instead he feels something else, something dangerously close to anticipation. The empty penthouse offers no answers, but the echo of Lucy's humming lingers, a simple melody cutting through his carefully constructed silence. Sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan venue, casting rainbow patterns across marble floors. James adjusts his tie for the third time in as many minutes, surveying the hastily assembled gathering. Despite Lucy's insistence on simplicity, his world has infiltrated every corner. Business associates in designer suits, socialites draped in winter couture, all of them whispering behind manicured hands. Quite the whirlwind romance. Richard Matthews says beside him, swirling expensive scotch in a crystal tumbler. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. Though I must say, James, a waitress? Surely there were more suitable options available. James's jaw tightens. Lucy is more than suitable. Of course, of course. Richard's tone drips with condescension. Very charitable of you, really, though one has to wonder about her motivations. Her motivations? James turns to face his oldest friend, voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Unlike the parade of social climbers you date, Lucy actually works for a living. She has integrity, intelligence, and more genuine class than half the people in this room. Richard blinks, taken aback by the vehemence in James's tone. Before he can respond, music signals the ceremony's start. James moves to his position, heart hammering against his ribs with unexpected force. Lucy appears in the doorway, and the whispers crescendo. Yet she wears a simple white dress that somehow makes the designer gowns around her look overwrought. Her dark hair falls in soft waves, and her chin is lifted with quiet dignity despite the scrutiny of the crowd. Their eyes meet across the space, and something shifts in James's chest. She looks real among all this artificial splendor, a breath of fresh air in his stifling world. The ceremony passes in a blur until they reach the vows. Lucy speaks first, her voice clear and steady. I vow to face our challenges with honesty and respect, she says, holding his gaze. To be a true partner, supporting your dreams while never losing sight of my own. To remember that real strength lies in vulnerability, and real love in choosing each other every day. The words strike deeper than James expected. When his turn comes, the carefully prepared speech feels hollow in his throat. Instead, he finds himself speaking from some unpracticed place. I vow to honor your independence and courage, he says quietly, to never take your trust for granted, to remember that true worth isn't measured in wealth or status, but in the integrity of our choices. Something flickers in Lucy's eyes, surprise perhaps, or recognition. The ring slides cool and heavy onto his finger, a physical reminder of their contract. But when they seal the ceremony with a brief kiss, James feels anything but contractual. Later at the reception, he finds Lucy hiding in a quiet corner, watching the crowd with wary eyes. The weight of their judgment hangs heavy in the air. Thank you, he says simply, offering her a glass of champagne. Lucy accepts it with a small smile. For what? Playing my part? For being real. James meets her gaze. I'm starting to understand why that matters. Before she can respond, they're swept into the demands of the reception. The end, but something has shifted between them, subtle as a change in air pressure before a storm. The mountain village emerges from swirling snow like something from a holiday card. Twinkling lights strung between pine trees, cobblestone streets dusted white, smoke curling from cabin chimneys. Their rental car crawls up the winding road, chains crunching against fresh powder. It's beautiful, Lucy breathes, pressing closer to the passenger window. Her wonder feels genuine, unlike the practiced appreciation James usually encounters. The cabin sits at the edge of town, a study in rustic luxury, with its exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, someone has decorated for Christmas, garlands on the mantelpiece, a tree waiting to be trimmed in the corner. The domestic scene feels intimate, almost invasive. I'll take the guest room, James says quickly, carrying their bags inside. You can have the master. Lucy rolls her eyes. Very gallant, though I'm not sure what the neighbors would think of those sleeping arrangements. As if summoned by her words, a knock sounds at the door. An older couple stands on the porch, bearing a casserole dish and bright smiles. Welcome to the neighborhood. The woman beams. We're the Hendersons. We just had to meet our new newlyweds. James forces a smile, but Lucy steps forward with natural warmth. That's so kind of you. I'm Lucy, and this is James. We're just here for the holidays. Well, hi. But the village is absolutely charming. Oh, you must come to the tree lighting ceremony tonight. Mrs. Henderson insists. It's a village tradition. So romantic. Before James can invent an excuse, Lucy accepts. The Hendersons leave them with the casserole and endless dinner party invitations, their interest in the new couple palpable. Sorry, Lucy says once they're gone, but we need to at least attempt to look like a normal couple. James watches her move around the kitchen, unpacking the casserole with comfortable familiarity. The domestic scene stirs something uncomfortable in his chest. That evening, they join the crowd in the village square. Christmas carols fill the air as the massive tree waits to be lit. Lucy's cheeks are pink from the cold snowflakes catching in her dark hair. "Kiss her!" someone shouts as the lights blaze to life. A photographer raises their camera. James hesitates, but Lucy turns to him with determined eyes. Their lips meet softly, a performance for their audience, but something electric passes between them, turning the kiss real for one dangerous moment. They break apart as the crowd cheers. Lucy steps back quickly, her expression unreadable in the multicolored lights. Later, she cooks a simple dinner in their cabin's kitchen, moving with easy grace while James watches from the breakfast bar. The scene feels oddly right, her humming carols while stirring sauce, him fighting the urge to step closer, to make this moment real. A knock interrupts his thoughts. More neighbors, eager to welcome them. Lucy handles the interruption with charm while James struggles to maintain their facade. One woman gushes about holiday romance and James catches Lucy watching him with an odd expression. The evening stretches into night, leaving them alone with unspoken questions hanging in the air. Snow falls steadily outside their windows, and somewhere in the village, church bells chime the hour. The sound echoes across their borrowed domesticity, a reminder that everything about this situation is temporary. But watching Lucy move through their shared space, James finds himself wishing it wasn't. The holiday market fills the village square with the scent of mulled wine and gingerbread. Wooden stalls overflow with handcrafted ornaments and warm scarves, while children's laughter mingles with Christmas music. Lucy weaves through the crowd with obvious delight, pulling James along in her wake. Her enthusiasm for simple pleasures continues to surprise him. The way her eyes light up at handmade decorations, how she stops to help a child retrieve a dropped toy. Then her steps falter. A man at a nearby stall stares at them with dangerous recognition. "Lucy!" His voice cuts through the festive atmosphere. "What the hell is this?" "Max." Lucy's grip on James' arm tightens. "I didn't expect to see you here." Clearly, Max's gaze fixes on their linked arms, his expression darkening. "Nice upgrade, though I have to wonder what's in it for you. Or should I say, how much?" James steps forward, but Lucy speaks first. "That's enough, Max." "Is it?" Max moves closer, aggression radiating from his stance. "Does your new husband know about your history of latching onto successful men? Or did you actually convince him this is real?" "I suggest you step back," James says quietly, steel beneath his controlled tone. "Now. Or what? You'll buy me off like you bought her?" Max sneers. "Ask her about..." James's hand shoots out, gripping Max's collar. "I said step back." The market crowd parts around them, whispers rising. Lucy touches James's arm. "He's not worth it. Let's go." James releases Max slowly, straightening his jacket. "Stay away from my wife." They leave Max standing in the snow, but the encounter's tension follows them back to the cabin. Inside, James paces while Lucy sinks onto the sofa. "Want to tell me about him?" James asks finally. Lucy stares into the unlit fireplace. "Not particularly." "Lucy." He stops pacing, studying her profile. "If there's something I should know, he's my ex." Lucy's voice carries old pain. "A manipulative narcissist who spent 2 years telling me I wasn't good enough, smart enough, pretty enough. When I finally left, he tried to convince everyone I was just after his money." She laughs without humor. Ironic, considering our current situation. James sits beside her, closer than strictly necessary. "You're nothing like what he described." "No?" Lucy turns to face him. "I'm literally married to you for money." "You're married to me because I asked for help," James corrects. "And you've been honest about your terms from the start. That's not manipulation, Lucy. It's integrity." Something vulnerable crosses her face. Before either can speak, another knock interrupts them. Mr. Harris stands on their porch, his expression grave. "Hope I'm not interrupting the honeymoon." Lucy tenses beside James as they invite him in. Harris moves through the cabin with careful attention, noting their shared space, the single bedroom, the domesticity they've attempted to create. "Just checking in," he says finally, "making sure everything is progressing naturally." "We appreciate your concern," James replies smoothly. "But as you can see, we're settling in fine." Harris nods slowly. "Indeed, though I couldn't help but notice the scene at the market earlier." After he leaves, tension crackles between them. Lucy stands by the fireplace, flames painting shadows across her face. He suspects something. Let him suspect. James moves beside her, watching the fire dance. "We haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't we?" Lucy's voice catches. "This whole thing is a lie." "Not everything." The words escape before James can stop them. Lucy turns to him, questions in her eyes, but James steps back, maintaining safe distance. They stand in loaded silence while the fire pops and crackles, casting warm light across their borrowed life. Outside, snow continues to fall on the village, covering their footprints and secrets in clean white powder. But inside, something real and dangerous grows between them, threatening to burn through their careful contracts and practiced performances. James watches Lucy's profile in the firelight and wonders if some lies can become truth given enough time and trust. The thought terrifies him almost as much as it draws him in. Snow crunches beneath James' Italian leather shoes as he follows Lucy up the salt-stained steps of the village community center. Christmas lights rim the building's weathered facade, their glow softened by the early evening darkness. Through fogged windows, shadows move in purposeful patterns, volunteers preparing for tonight's dinner. Lucy pushes open the heavy wooden door, releasing a wave of warmth and the scent of cinnamon. Inside, organized chaos reigns. Volunteers weave between folding tables draped in red cloth, carrying stacks of mismatched plates and tangled strings of lights. A massive Christmas tree dominates one corner, its branches heavy with handmade ornaments, paper angels and painted pine cones tied with fraying ribbon. James hangs back, hands in his pockets. The scene before him feels foreign, too raw and unpolished compared to the carefully curated charity galas he usually attends. But Lucy moves through the space like she belongs, greeting volunteers by name and immediately assessing where help is needed. "Sarah, those garlands would look perfect along the windows," she calls to a teenager balanced precariously on a stepladder. "And Mike, we should set up the hot cocoa station near the entrance, catch people right as they come in from the cold." Her natural authority surprises James. He's used to seeing Lucy's quieter side at the cabin, but here she radiates confidence, drawing others into her orbit with genuine warmth. A small boy clutching a tin of cookies hovers at the edge of the activity, looking lost. Lucy spots him and kneels down, her smile gentle. "Those must be your mom's famous snickerdoodles," she says, and the boy nods shyly. "I bet they'll be the first ones gone. Want to help me set up the dessert table?" The boy's face brightens as Lucy leads him toward a table already laden with homemade treats. James watches their interaction, noting how easily she puts the child at ease. It's a skill he's never mastered, the ability to connect without agenda or expectation. "Mr. Preston?" Mr. Harris materializes beside him, clipboard in hand. "Quite different from your usual charitable endeavors, isn't it?" James straightens his tie, a reflexive gesture. The foundation typically focuses on larger initiatives. Yes, writing checks is certainly more efficient. Mr. Harris's tone carries a hint of challenge, though I suspect Margaret would have appreciated this more personal approach. Before James can respond, Lucy appears at his elbow. "James, we need someone to run the hot cocoa station. Think you can handle that?" He blinks. "I don't. It's not complicated," Lucy cuts him off, already steering him toward a table lined with paper cups and thermal dispensers. Just smile, pour, and try not to scald anyone." James wants to protest. He hasn't served anyone anything since his brief stint as a waiter in college, an experiment in building character that lasted exactly one shift. But Lucy's already moving on to the next task, leaving him alone with an army of empty cups and the daunting prospect of interaction with strangers. The first rush comes as families begin arriving, stamping snow from their boots and unwinding scarves from red-cheeked faces. James falls into an awkward rhythm, filling cups with mechanical precision while attempting what he hopes passes for a welcoming expression. The children approach cautiously at first, intimidated by his formal attire and stiff demeanor. "You're doing it wrong." A small voice pipes up as James measures out yet another perfectly portioned cup of cocoa. He looks down to find a girl of perhaps 6, her hair escaping from uneven braids. "Excuse me? Hot cocoa needs marshmallows," she informs him seriously, "and whipped cream and sprinkles. I don't have any of those things." The girl sighs with the deep disappointment only children can muster. "I'll help you fix it." Before James can protest, she's dragging over a chair from a nearby table and clambering up beside him. Under her expert direction, the hot cocoa station transforms. Marshmallows appear from somewhere, along with a can of whipped cream and a shaker of red and green sprinkles. The line of children grows longer, drawn by the promise of sugar-laden confections. James finds himself relaxing despite himself, amused by his tiny supervisor's running commentary on proper hot cocoa construction. Across the room, Lucy catches his eye and grins, clearly enjoying his predicament. She's stationed at a craft table, helping to decorate paper snowflakes with glitter that will undoubtedly end up everywhere. The evening progresses in a blur of activity. James loses track of how many cups of cocoa he serves, how many small faces light up at the tower of marshmallows he learns to build under strict instruction. He catches glimpses of Lucy throughout the room, leading a Christmas carol with surprising skill, comforting a crying toddler, laughing with volunteers as they replenish serving trays. "Time for the gingerbread station," Lucy announces eventually, clapping her hands for attention. "Everyone who wants to decorate cookies, follow me." A stampede of children surges toward the newly revealed table of naked gingerbread men. Lucy waves James over, ignoring his subtle headshake. "You can't hide behind the cocoa forever," she tells him, pressing a piping bag of royal icing into his hands. "Besides, these kids need to see that even successful businessmen can make a mess sometimes." James stares at the piping bag like it might bite him. "I don't think that's the problem." Lucy cuts him off softly so only he can hear. "You think too much." She demonstrates the proper icing technique for their eager audience, creating a simple but cheerful face on her cookie. James attempts to copy her movements, but his hands, so steady in board meetings, betray him. His gingerbread man ends up with a lopsided grimace and what looks like a tragic case of chicken pox. The children find this hilarious. Soon they're offering advice, showing him their own creations with pride. James finds himself drawn into their enthusiasm, competitive spirit awakening as he attempts to master the art of cookie decoration. Lucy watches with barely concealed amusement, occasionally offering encouraging comments that sound suspiciously like teasing. "You're getting better," she says after his 5th attempt, examining the slightly less disastrous result. "Though I'm not sure gingerbread men typically wear 3-piece suits." "Everyone has their own interpretation," James defends, but he's fighting a smile. The children eventually drift away to other activities, leaving James and Lucy alone at the cookie station. She's humming along with the Christmas music playing softly through speakers, adding delicate snowflakes to her latest creation. The overhead lights catch the flower dusting her dark hair, the sparkle of sugar on her fingertips. "You're good at this," James says suddenly. "All of it, making people feel welcome." Lucy glances up, surprise flickering across her features. "It's not hard. You just have to remember that everyone wants to feel like they matter." The simple truth of her words hits him unexpectedly hard. How long has it been since he approached any interaction without calculating its potential value? Since he let himself simply exist in a moment, covered in icing and surrounded by children's laughter? "Your grandmother understood that," Mr. Harris says, appearing beside them. James hadn't noticed him watching. She believed true wealth wasn't in what you could take, but in what you could give. Lucy's eyes meet James across the table, something unspoken passing between them. But before he can respond, a chorus of young voices breaks into silent night near the Christmas tree. Lucy's face lights up. "That's my cue," she says, wiping her hands on her apron. "Try not to terrorize any more gingerbread men while I'm gone." James watches her join the impromptu choir, her voice blending seamlessly with the children's. The song fills the room, simple and pure, devoid of the professional polish he's used to at holiday concerts. Yet something about its imperfect beauty catches in his chest, making it hard to breathe. "She's quite remarkable," Mr. Harris observes quietly. The question is, do you truly understand what you have in her? The words follow James through the rest of the evening, echoing in his mind as they clean up afterward. Lucy moves through the empty room, gathering scattered decorations, humming carols under her breath. She looks tired but content, a light in her eyes that makes her more beautiful than any socialite James has ever dated. The drive back to their cabin passes in comfortable silence, snow falling steadily outside. James steals glances at Lucy's profile, illuminated by passing streetlights. She's curled in the passenger seat, chin propped on her hand as she watches the world drift by in white. Inside, the fireplace springs to life with the flip of a switch, casting warm light across the cabin's exposed beams. Lucy disappears briefly and returns with 2 mugs of real hot chocolate. Proper hot chocolate, she insists, not that powder stuff we served earlier. They settle on opposite ends of the leather couch, the fire crackling between them and their unspoken thoughts. Lucy cradles her mug in both hands, steam rising like a veil. "Can I ask you something?" she says finally, voice soft. "Why did you really agree to this arrangement?" James stares into his own mug, watching marshmallows slowly dissolve. "You know why. The inheritance, the foundation." "No." Lucy shakes her head. "I mean, why this way? Why not find someone from your world? Someone who understands all the rules and expectations?" The question catches him off guard. He takes a careful sip of chocolate, buying time to organize his thoughts. Because they all want something. Status, connections, a piece of the Preston empire. They see the name, not. He trails off, unsure how to finish. "Not you," Lucy completes quietly. James looks at her then, really looks. She's pulled her legs up beneath her, dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. In the firelight, her eyes hold a depth of understanding that makes his chest tight. The bakery," she says suddenly. "That's my something." "What?" Lucy sets her mug aside, drawing a deep breath. "You should know why I agreed to this. Everyone has an angle, right?" Her laugh holds no humor. "I've dreamed of opening my own bakery since I was a kid. My mom taught me to bake, said it was like creating magic from ordinary things. But dreams don't pay bills, and banks don't exactly line up to loan money to waitresses." The words tumble out faster now, like she's afraid to stop. "I've tried everything. Extra jobs, saving every penny, even entered some baking competitions. But it's never enough. When you made your offer," she shrugs, vulnerability raw in her expression. "It felt like my only chance." James absorbs this confession, feeling the weight of her trust. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you should know what you're buying." Lucy's voice wavers slightly. "My silence, my cooperation, it's all for a dream that probably seems ridiculous to someone like you." "It's not ridiculous." The words come out fiercer than intended. "Having a vision, wanting to build something of your own, I understand that better than most." Lucy studies him, firelight dancing across her features. "Your turn," she says softly. "Tell me something real." James opens his mouth to deflect, but something in her steady gaze stops him. Instead, he finds himself speaking about a Christmas he rarely lets himself remember. "I was 12 when my parents split up," he begins, the words feeling rusty. "They both had holiday parties that night, different parties, of course. Neither wanted to miss networking opportunities, even on Christmas Eve. So they left me in the mansion with the staff and a mountain of expensive presents under a perfect tree." He can still see it, the towering pine dripping with crystal ornaments, not a single branch out of place. "I sat there all night, opening gifts alone. Everything I'd asked for, wrapped in paper that probably cost more than most people's entire Christmas budget. And all I could think was, none of it mattered. None of it meant anything." The confession hangs in the air between them. Lucy doesn't speak, but she shifts closer, her hand finding his in the space between their bodies. Her fingers are warm from the mug, slightly sticky with lingering sugar. Real. "That's why you hate Christmas," she says, not a question. "I don't hate it." James stares into the fire, feeling the gentle pressure of her hand in his. "I just stopped believing in it. In all of it. The magic, the connection, the idea that anything could be more valuable than success." Lucy's thumb traces small circles on his palm, the gesture unconscious but soothing. It's never too late, to believe again. To find joy in things that can't be measured in dollar signs. James turns to look at her, struck by the sincerity in her expression. The firelight paints gold in her hair, shadows dancing across her skin. Something shifts in his chest, a wall crumbling so quietly he almost misses it. They sit in comfortable silence, watching flames dance and snow fall beyond frost-edged windows. James feels a strange peace settle over him, different from his usual carefully maintained control. Lucy's hand remains in his, an anchor in uncharted waters. The spell breaks with a sharp knock at the door. Lucy startles, pulling away as Max's voice carries through the wood, slurred and angry. James watches the color drain from her face, and something cold settles in his stomach. "Lucy," Max calls again. "We need to talk." The peace of their evening shatters like glass, leaving jagged edges and unspoken words hanging in the firelit air. James rises, protective instinct warring with sudden doubt. Lucy stands too, wrapping her arms around herself as if for protection. The moment stretches, taut with tension. Outside, snow continues to fall, indifferent to the drama unfolding within the cabin's walls. But something has changed. A shift as subtle and significant as the first crack in winter ice. The question is whether what lies beneath will drown them both. Morning brings weak sunlight filtering through snow-laden clouds. James and Lucy walk through the village square, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The previous night's revelations have left an uncertain warmth between them, reflected in their easy conversation and the way Lucy's hand occasionally brushes his as they walk. "The kids are still talking about your gingerbread disasters," Lucy teases, nodding to a group of children who wave as they pass. "I think you've inspired a whole new approach to cookie decoration." James is about to respond when a familiar figure emerges from the coffee shop ahead. Max's eyes lock onto them, his expression darkening as he takes in their proximity. Lucy tenses beside James, her smile falling away. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Max's voice carries across the square, drawing curious looks from passers-by. He approaches with unsteady steps, coffee sloshing over the rim of his cup. The waitress and the billionaire playing house. "Max, don't," Lucy warns, but he's already too close, alcohol heavy on his breath despite the early hour. "Does he know, Lucy?" Max's laugh is ugly. "Does your rich husband know how good you are at using people? How many men have funded your little bakery dream?" James feels Lucy flinch beside him. Something cold and hard settles in his chest, doubt creeping in like frost. "That's enough," he says, but Max's words have already found their mark. Back at the cabin, tension crackles between them like static before a storm. James paces the living room while Lucy stands by the fireplace, arms crossed defensively. "Just ask what you want to ask," she says finally, her voice tight. "Is it true?" The words taste bitter. "Am I just another mark, another stepping stone to your dream?" "How dare you?" Lucy's eyes flash. "After everything I told you last night, how can you even think?" "You admitted the bakery was your angle," James interrupts, his own insecurities bleeding into anger. "How many other men have heard that story? How many?" "Stop!" Lucy's voice cracks. "You want to believe Max because it's easier, isn't it? Easier than admitting you might actually feel something real?" The truth in her words hits like a physical blow. James turns away, unable to face the hurt in her eyes. Without another word, he grabs his coat and storms out into the snow. The village streets blur past as James walks aimlessly, Max's accusations warring with memories of Lucy's honesty by the fire. Every genuine moment they've shared now feels tainted by doubt. His grandmother's photo seems to watch him accusingly from his wallet when he pulls it out to check the time. Back at the cabin, Lucy sits alone by the dying fire. Tears fall silently as she stares at the flames, wondering how something that felt so real could shatter so easily. Outside, snow continues to fall, covering their footprints until no trace remains of the path that led them here. Snow crunches beneath Lucy's boots as she makes her way through the village square, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. The massive Christmas tree looms ahead, its lights twinkling even in the pale dawn. James stands beneath it, a solitary figure in a charcoal wool coat, his posture rigid as he stares up at the star-topped pinnacle. Lucy's heart pounds against her ribs as she approaches. She rehearsed this speech all night, but the words feel hollow now, inadequate against the weight of yesterday's argument. James doesn't turn at her footsteps, though his shoulders tense slightly, the only indication he's aware of her presence. "I couldn't sleep," she says, stopping a few feet away. The space between them feels vast, charged with unspoken words. I kept thinking about what happened, about how I reacted. James continues staring at the tree, his profile sharp against the backdrop of falling snow. Lucy forces herself to continue, even as his silence threatens to break her resolve. I let my emotions get the better of me, she admits, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. That's not. I would never try to exploit you, James. You have to know that. He turns then, finally meeting her gaze. His eyes are tired, shadows beneath them suggesting he's had as restless a night as she has. Do I? The words come out clipped, precise. I find I don't know much of anything anymore. Lucy swallows hard, fighting the urge to retreat from his cold stare. Then let me prove it. The village is hosting their Christmas Eve ball tonight. We should go together, show everyone that we're united, that we can make this work. James studies her for a long moment, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. The calculation in his expression is familiar. The businessman weighing risks and returns. But there's something else there too, a flicker of uncertainty that makes him look almost vulnerable. A united front, he repeats, testing the words. Is that what we are? We're whatever we need to be to get through this. Lucy takes a step closer, close enough to catch the scent of his expensive cologne. To fulfill your grandmother's wishes. The mention of Margaret makes something shift in James' expression, too quick to read. He turns back to the tree, but his posture softens slightly. The ball starts at 8. It's not forgiveness, not even close, but it's a start. Lucy nods, relief mixing with a different kind of tension as she realizes what she's committed them to. I'll need to find something to wear. I'm sure the local boutiques can provide something suitable. James's tone is dismissive, already retreating behind his professional mask. But he hesitates before adding, I'll have the car ready at 7:30. Lucy watches him stride away across the square, his footsteps leaving precise impressions in the fresh snow. The Christmas tree towers above her, its lights reflecting off the icy ground like scattered stars. She shivers, though whether from the cold or the lingering tension of their encounter, she can't be sure. The boutique proves surprisingly well stocked, its window display featuring an elegant midnight blue gown that catches Lucy's eye immediately. The price tag makes her wince, but she reminds herself that this is part of the act. The billionaire's wife must look the part, especially tonight. When she returns to their shared cabin to prepare, James is already there, adjusting his bow tie in the hallway mirror. His reflection catches her movement, eyes tracking her progress up the stairs without comment. The silence between them feels different now, less hostile, but heavy with unspoken things. Lucy emerges an hour later, the blue gown falling in graceful lines from her shoulders. She struggles with the delicate clasp of a borrowed bracelet, muttering under her breath until James appears beside her. Allow me, he says quietly, taking the bracelet from her trembling fingers. His hands are warm as they brush against her wrist, steadier than hers as he secures the clasp. For a moment, neither of them moves, caught in the strange intimacy of the gesture. James steps back first, clearing his throat. The car's waiting. The historic hall glows with warmth as they approach, light spilling from its windows onto the snow-covered ground. James offers his arm without looking at her, and Lucy takes it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the expensive wool of his jacket. They pause at the entrance, a moment of silent agreement passing between them before they step inside. The room falls quiet as they enter, dozens of curious eyes tracking their progress across the floor. Lucy forces a smile, channeling every ounce of confidence she can muster. Beside her, James plays his part perfectly, the attentive husband, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they make their way through the crowd. They make such a lovely couple, someone whispers, loud enough to carry. Who would have thought James Preston would find love in our little village? The words hit Lucy like physical blows, each compliment another weight added to her conscience. She maintains her smile, but her fingers tighten on James' arm. He responds by drawing her closer, his breath warm against her ear as he murmurs, "Breathe. You're doing fine." They make it through the first hour, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about their whirlwind romance. James handles most of the conversation, his responses smooth and practiced. Lucy watches him work the room, marveling at how easily he wears this mask of contentment. But she catches the tension in his jaw, the way his smile never quite reaches his eyes. The evening might have continued in this carefully orchestrated dance if not for the sudden commotion at the entrance. Lucy turns at the sound of raised voices, her heart stopping as she recognizes Max's drunken swagger. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Max's voice carries across the room, silencing conversations in its wake. "The happy couple, putting on quite a show." James steps forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Lucy. "I believe you're interrupting a private event." "Private?" Max laughs, the sound harsh and bitter. "Nothing private about a business transaction, is there? That's all this is, a convenient arrangement with a convenient timeline. What was it, marriage by Christmas Eve or lose everything?" The room goes deadly quiet. Lucy feels the blood drain from her face as dozens of shocked gazes turn their way. Across the room, Mr. Harris straightens, his expression darkening as he processes Max's words. "You're drunk," James says, his voice dangerously calm. "I suggest you leave before you embarrass yourself further." But Max isn't finished. He sways forward, pointing an accusatory finger at Lucy. "Tell them how much he's paying you. Tell them about the annulment clause, the timeline tied to his grandmother's will, or are you too ashamed to admit you sold yourself for a chance at opening that pathetic little bakery?" Lucy's vision blurs, the room spinning around her. She reaches for James, but he's already turning to face her, his expression thunderous. "Is this true?" His voice is barely above a whisper, but it cuts through her like ice. "Did you tell him about our arrangement?" "No." Lucy's denial comes out choked, desperate. "James, I would never—" "Then how does he know?" James' control slips, anger bleeding into his tone. "How does he know about the will, about the timeline?" The crowd watches their confrontation with horrified fascination. Lucy tries to explain, but the words won't come. Her chest feels too tight, her throat closing around excuses that sound hollow even in her own mind. "I trusted you," James says, each word precise and cutting. "I actually started to believe." He breaks off, running a hand through his hair in a rare display of agitation. "I should have known better." "James, please." Lucy reaches for him, but he steps back, putting distance between them that feels like miles. "Let me explain." "I think you've explained enough." His voice is cold now, all trace of emotion carefully erased. "We're done here." Lucy stands frozen as James turns away, unable to process the speed with which everything has fallen apart. The whispers of the crowd press in around her, judgment and pity mixing in their stares. She catches a glimpse of Max's satisfied smirk, of Mr. Harris's contemplative frown before the tears finally overwhelm her. "I never wanted to hurt you," she manages, her voice breaking. "I thought you understood?" But James doesn't turn back, his shoulders rigid as he makes his way through the parting crowd. Lucy feels the weight of every stare, every whispered comment, crushing her beneath their judgment. With a sob she can't quite suppress, she turns and flees into the snowy night, leaving behind the warmth and music of the ball. James stands alone in the cabin's living room, the fire's glow casting restless shadows across the walls. Ice clinks against crystal as he pours another measure of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the firelight like liquid gold. His bow tie hangs loose around his neck, his usual perfect composure cracking around the edges. The events of the ball play on repeat in his mind. Max's accusations, Lucy's desperate denials, the look in her eyes when he turned away. He takes a long drink, letting the whiskey burn away the hollow ache in his chest. Margaret's voice echoes in his thoughts, clear as if she were standing beside him. "The heart sees what the mind overlooks, my dear. Don't let fear blind you to truth." James moves to the window, watching snow blanket the village in white. His reflection stares back at him, successful and powerful and utterly alone. For the first time he sees what others must see, a man who has everything and nothing at all. The inheritance suddenly seems meaningless compared to the weight of Lucy's absence. He remembers her laugh during the tree lighting ceremony, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams for the bakery, the genuine warmth she brought to his carefully ordered world. "I'm a fool," he murmurs to his reflection, realizing too late that his distrust stems not from Lucy's actions but from his own fears. The thought of losing her, really losing her, not just as part of their arrangement, leaves him feeling hollow in a way no business success could fill. Across the village, in a small room at the local inn, Lucy sits at a worn desk, tears blurring her vision as she writes. The inn's stationery feels rough beneath her fingers, nothing like the premium paper James probably uses for his business correspondence, but it will have to do for what might be her final words to him. Dear James, when you proposed this arrangement, I saw it as a simple solution to both our problems. A business transaction, clean and uncomplicated. But somewhere between your grandmother's ornaments and the village Christmas tree, something changed. I found myself drawn to the man behind the billion-dollar empire, the one who helps children hang decorations and remembers how his grandmother liked her tea. I never betrayed your trust. I never told Max about our arrangement. But I understand why you believed I did. Trust doesn't come easily to either of us, does it? Perhaps that's why this hurts so much. I'm leaving the village tonight. The inheritance is safe. I'll sign whatever papers Mr. Harris requires to verify our marriage was genuine. You deserve that much, at least. I hope you find what you're looking for, James. I hope someday you'll understand that not everyone wants something from you. Sometimes, people just want you. Lucy. She folds the letter carefully, sliding it into an envelope with hands that shake only slightly. Through the window, she can see the village square, the massive Christmas tree now dark against the snowy sky. Tomorrow, it will light up for someone else's holiday wishes. James walks through the empty streets, snow crunching beneath his Italian leather shoes. The village sleeps under its white blanket, holiday decorations casting muted glows through the darkness. He pauses in the square, looking up at the towering Christmas tree that witnessed their morning conversation. Was it only this morning? It feels like years have passed. The weight of his mistakes settles around his shoulders like a physical thing. He thinks of Lucy's face when he accused her, of all the walls he put up to protect himself, that only served to push away the one person who saw past them. Snow continues to fall, each flake a reminder of time slipping away. The village clock strikes 11, its chimes echoing through the silent streets. In 1 hour, it will be Christmas Eve, the deadline that brought them together and might now tear them apart forever. James straightens his shoulders, decision crystallizing in his mind. The inn's lights still burn in the distance, a beacon through the falling snow. He starts walking, each step carrying him closer to the one thing his money can't buy, a chance to make things right. Snow drifts past the frosted windows of Whitaker's general store, each flake caught in the warm glow of string lights and tinsel garlands. James stands at the counter, his reflection fractured across jars of penny candy and ancient brass scales. The shop's wooden floors creak beneath his feet, a symphony of age and memory so different from the sterile silence of his penthouse. Mr. Whitaker emerges from behind a tower of gift-wrapped packages, his weathered hands straightening a display of glass ornaments. We're closing soon, Mr. Preston. His eyes, sharp despite his age, study James' disheveled appearance. Though you look like you need more than just our holiday hours. James runs a hand through his hair, destroying what remains of its careful styling. I made a mistake. The words taste foreign on his tongue, bitter as black coffee. With Lucy. Ah! Mr. Whitaker sets down an ornament, giving James his full attention. The kind of mistake that brings a man to a general store on Christmas Eve when he should be celebrating with the woman he loves? I don't. James stops, the familiar denial dying in his throat. I pushed her away, made her think that this was still just about the inheritance. His fingers trace the edge of the counter, following grooves worn smooth by decades of transactions. I'm not good at this. Being human? Mr. Whitaker's laugh holds no judgment. None of us are, son. That's what makes it interesting. He moves to a shelf of old photographs, pulling one down with careful reverence. See this? James steps closer. The photo shows a much younger Mr. Whitaker standing beneath the village Christmas tree, down on one knee before a woman whose smile outshines the decorations surrounding them. Martha, Mr. Whitaker says softly, my wife of 52 years, God rest her soul, but I almost lost her before we began. He taps the photo's edge. I was like you, afraid of being vulnerable, of losing control, spent months planning the perfect moment, the perfect words. Then Christmas Eve came, and I froze. What changed? She started to walk away. Mr. Whitaker's eyes grow distant, and I realize that all my planning, all my fear of looking foolish, none of it mattered compared to losing her. So I ran after her, dropped to my knees, right there in the snow, and spoke from my heart. His gaze refocuses on James. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't controlled, but it was real. James stares at the photo, at the raw joy captured in that imperfect moment. His chest tightens with recognition, the same fear that's been holding him back, the same choice hovering before him. The town's Christmas Eve celebration starts at 11, Mr. Whitaker says, returning the photo to its shelf. Same tree, same spot, every year since before that picture was taken. He begins closing up the register, his movements unhurried. Sometimes the best traditions are the ones we stumble into by accident. Understanding floods James's mind like winter sunlight. He straightens, purpose replacing uncertainty. "Thank you," he says, already moving toward the door. "Mr. Preston?" Mr. Whitaker's voice stops him. "Perfect moments don't exist, but perfect timing does. Don't waste yours." The cold hits James like a physical force as he steps outside, but for once he welcomes it. His mind races with possibilities, with plans forming and dissolving like snowflakes. For the first time in his life, he lets go of the need to control every detail. The community center glows warm against the darkening sky, its windows alive with movement. Inside, children dart between tables laden with cookies and hot chocolate, their excitement palpable. James recognizes several faces from the charity dinner, the event where Lucy's compassion first cracked his carefully maintained facade. "Mr. Preston," Tommy, a gap-toothed 8-year-old, spots him first. "Are you here to help with the celebration?" James crouches to the boy's level, an idea taking shape. "Actually, I need your help, yours and your friends. It's about Lucy." Tommy's eyes widen. "Like a secret mission?" "Exactly like that." James glances around the room, noting the curious faces gathering. "I need to tell Lucy something important, and I want to make it special." "Is it that you love her?" Sarah, Tommy's older sister, joins them with knowing eyes. "Because everybody already knows that, except maybe you." James feels his ears warm, but he doesn't deny it. "I need to make sure she knows it too. Will you help me?" The children exchange excited looks before nodding eagerly. James outlines his plan, watching it grow and evolve with each suggestion they offer. Their enthusiasm reminds him of decorating the tree with Margaret and of the pure joy he'd forgotten how to feel. "One more thing," he says, turning to the local musician setting up in the corner. "Do you know Silent Night?" The preparation passes in a blur of whispered plans and careful coordination. James moves through it all with a strange sense of calm, as if every moment in his life has been leading to this one. The perfect business arrangement has become something far more valuable and far more terrifying. Snow continues to fall as James makes his way to the town square. The massive Christmas tree dominates the space, its lights reflecting off fresh powder like scattered stars. Villagers gather in small groups, their breath visible in the cold air as they chat and laugh. And then he sees her. Lucy stands near the edge of the crowd, snowflakes catching in her dark hair. She holds an envelope. Her goodbye, he realizes with a jolt of fear. The choir's voices rise in harmony, filling the square with familiar carols. But James barely hears them over the pounding of his heart. He steps forward, snow crunching beneath his feet. "Lucy." She turns, surprise flickering across her features before she schools them into careful neutrality. The crowd quiets, attention shifting to the drama unfolding before them. James forces himself to keep moving, to maintain eye contact despite the urge to retreat into his familiar emotional distance. "I've spent my whole life building walls," he says, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "Creating the perfect image, the perfect life, but it was empty. Until you." He takes another step closer, close enough to see the wariness in her eyes. "You saw through every defense I put up, made me laugh when I thought I'd forgotten how, showed me what real strength looks like." Lucy's fingers tighten on the envelope. "James, I'm not finished." He swallows hard, forcing himself to continue. "I've been afraid of losing control, of being vulnerable, but I'm more afraid of losing you." James drops to one knee, snow soaking through his expensive trousers. He pulls out a small ornament, its surface catching the Christmas lights. This isn't about the inheritance. It never really was. The ornament spins gently, revealing the engraved words, "Our first Christmas together." "I love you," James says simply. not as part of a contract or a business arrangement. I love your humor, your compassion, your ability to see the best in people, even stubborn billionaires who don't deserve it. I love that you make me want to be better, to feel more, to live instead of just exist. Movement ripples through the crowd as Max pushes forward. This is ridiculous, he sneers. Another performance for your inheritance scheme? How stupid do you think? This has nothing to do with you. James cuts him off without looking away from Lucy, or the inheritance, or anything except the fact that I love this woman, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Lucy takes a step forward, tears freezing on her cheeks. I've been afraid too, she whispers. Afraid of believing in something real after so many disappointments. Afraid of falling for someone who might never love me back. I do love you back. James rises, closing the distance between them. More than I thought possible. Lucy reaches for the ornament, her fingers brushing his. Our first Christmas of many? If you'll have me, her smile breaks like dawn across fresh snow. Yes. The crowd erupts in cheers as Lucy pulls James close, their kiss warming despite the December chill. Snowflakes swirl around them like nature's own celebration, and the choir launches into Silent Night, Lucy's favorite carol. Well, Mr. Harris's voice cuts through the applause as he approaches from the crowd's edge. I think my presence here is no longer necessary. His usual stern expression softens. Margaret would be proud, James, not of the inheritance or the estate, but of the man you've become. Max slips away, his attempts at sabotage forgotten in the genuine joy of the moment. James barely notices, too caught up in the way Lucy's eyes shine in the Christmas lights. They thank the villagers for their support, accepting hugs and well wishes with genuine warmth. The next morning dawns clear and cold, Christmas sunlight sparkling off fresh snow. James leads Lucy to the small shop on Main Street, her confusion turning to disbelief as he hands her a set of keys. What is this? She asks, though her eyes say she already knows. Your bakery. James watches emotion flood her face. The beginning of our life together, a life filled with purpose and shared dreams. Lucy throws her arms around him, tears soaking into his sweater. Thank you, she whispers, for everything. They spend Christmas Day hosting a charity dinner at the community center, a new tradition that feels as natural as breathing. The children who helped with James' surprise serve meals alongside them, their energy infectious. James finds himself fully present in each moment, savoring the joy he once dismissed as frivolous. Later, in their cabin, they sit before a crackling fire. Lucy curls against James's side, both of them content in the comfortable silence. Thank you, James says softly, for taking a chance on me, for seeing past the walls I built. Lucy tilts her head up to meet his eyes. Thank you for letting them down. The sound of distant carolers drifts through the window as they toast to their future, to the life they never expected to find in a simple business arrangement. New Year's Eve finds them back in the village square, watching fireworks paint the midnight sky in bursts of color. The villagers, now friends, celebrate around them, but James focuses on Lucy's hand in his, on the way she fits perfectly against his side. I have big plans for the bakery, Lucy says, excitement coloring her voice. I want it to be more than just a business, a place where people gather, where the community comes together. James smiles, remembering his own obsession with business plans and profit margins. Whatever you need, he promises. Partner. They end the night on their cabin's porch, watching stars emerge between dissipating firework clouds. Their hands remain intertwined, wedding rings catching starlight. This is the happiest I've ever been, James admits, the words coming easily now. Lucy squeezes his hand. It's just the beginning. The final fireworks burst overhead, but James watches Lucy instead. The joy in her expression, the love in her eyes. He thinks of Margaret, of her final gift hidden in the will's stipulation. She hadn't just preserved the family fortune, she'd given him something far more precious. A chance at real happiness, wrapped in the most unexpected package of all. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our story. Your time and support mean the world to us. If this video resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Your engagement helps us grow and continue sharing meaningful stories. See you in the next video.